Human's voice saves alien girl from the edge. What if you stood on a glowing cliff under 3 red suns, haunted by a past you couldn't outrun, and found an alien girl teetering on the brink of oblivion, her golden eyes pleading for a reason to stay, only to discover your voice could pull her back and spark a fight that changes everything. Today, I'm your guide from the Sci-Fi Nebula channel, and I'm plunging you into the windswept deserts of Klythera, a world of shimmering cliffs and floating cities, where a scarred human and a broken Sylvaran weave a tale of loss, defiance, and redemption. Don't drift away, because the pulse-pounding climax in Chapter 5, The Horrors Unveiled, will unravel a truth so dark it'll leave you reeling. Trust me, it's a twist you won't forget. Before we leap into this cosmic storm, hit that like button and smash subscribe to push us toward 1,000 subs. Your support is the wind beneath our wings, lifting us to bring you more breathtaking stories. Got a sci-fi dream you want us to explore? Drop it in the comments, or just toss us a 1 if you're gripped, or a 0 if we need to sharpen the edge. Now, let's soar into the vast unknown and uncover the power of a voice in the void. Chapter 1, Whispers of the Wind on Klythera's Edge. Torin Vex, a weathered human scarred by stars, stood poised where an alien girl teetered on oblivion's brink. The glowing cliffs of Klythera shimmered beneath his boots, a jagged scar against the endless desert, as 3 red suns bled into the horizon. Wind howled through the dunes, tugging at his silver combat armor, its scratches catching the fading light like memories etched in steel. Below, the floating city of Aetherion hung suspended in the violet sky, towers of translucent alloy pulsing with energy, a fragile marvel of human and alien ingenuity. Torin had come here to escape, to bury the ghosts that haunted him, but the wind carried something else tonight, a sound that wasn't its own. He was 42, though the years felt heavier, gray streaks threading his dark hair, eyes a piercing blue dulled by too many sleepless nights. Once a combat engineer in the Fringe Wars, he designed ships that danced through asteroid fields, machines that defied the void. But one had failed, catastrophically, and taken his sister, Arya, with it. 10 years ago, her scream had cut through the comms as the hull buckled, a sound he couldn't unhear. He'd quit after that, drifting from system to system, a lone figure in a galaxy that didn't care. Klythera was his latest refuge, its desolate beauty a mirror to the emptiness he carried. He'd climb these cliffs each dusk, not to meditate, but to feel the edge, close enough to remind him he was still alive. The wind shifted, sharper now, and with it came a sob, soft, broken, alien. Torin's head tilted, his enhanced hearing picking up the shuffle of feet on stone. He turned, slow and deliberate, and saw her, a Sylvaran, her form outlined against the sun's dying glow. Her skin shimmered a deep jade, flecked with luminescent veins that pulsed faintly, like stars trapped beneath her flesh. Long hair, black as the void, whipped around her face, and her eyes burned gold, fierce yet fractured. Thin, tattered wings hung from her back, useless remnants of a species that once soared. She was beautiful, in a way that ached, but it was the despair in her stance that stopped him cold. She stood at the cliff's edge, toes curling over the drop, her trembling hands clenched as if fighting the urge to let go. Torin knew that look. He'd seen it in his own reflection after Arya's death, when the guilt had nearly drowned him, when he'd stood on a ship's airlock, one step from the black. He didn't move, didn't startle her, just watched as she swayed, the wind pushing her closer to the fall. Her lips parted, a ragged breath escaping, and he saw the tears, golden streaks glinting down her cheeks. She was ready to end it, to let Klythera's sands swallow her story. He couldn't let that happen. Not again. Don't jump just yet, he called, his voice low and rough, cutting through the wind like a blade. Sit down first. Tell me why someone as stunning as you wants to vanish from a sky like this. He kept his tone steady, casual, as if they were old friends sharing a drink, not strangers on the edge of death. She froze, her golden eyes snapping to him, wide with shock and a flicker of anger. Her wings twitched, a reflex of a flight she couldn't take. You don't belong here, human, she hissed, her voice melodic even in its venom. This isn't your pain to judge. Torin shrugged, easing himself onto the stone, legs dangling over the abyss. The glow of the cliff pulsed beneath him, warm against his palms. "Maybe not," he said, meeting her gaze. "But I've got time, and this view's better with company. Humor me, I'm not here to save you, just to listen." Her lips quivered, caught between a snarl and a sob. She took a step back from the edge, not toward him, but away from the drop, a small victory. "You humans," she spat, "always meddling where you're not wanted. You think your words can fix everything?" "Not everything," Torin replied, his blue eyes steady, unflinching. "But they've kept me from jumping a time or two. Try me. What's driving you to this?" She hugged herself, wings folding tighter, her glow dimming as if her life force ebbed with each breath. The wind tugged at her, a cruel tease, and for a moment, she seemed to waver, teetering between the void and his voice. Then, slowly, she sank to her knees, not beside him, but close enough. "Lirien," she whispered, barely audible over the gale. "My name is Lirien." "Torin," he said, nodding once. "Good to meet you, Lirien. Now, what's a Sylvaran like you doing on a cliff like this?" Her golden eyes darkened, memories shadowing their fire. "Sylvara's gone," she said, her voice breaking. "My home, my people, burned to ash in the wars. I had something left, something that could have saved others, but it's been stolen. Ripped away by a monster who calls this city his kingdom." Torin leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the wind ruffling his hair. "Who's the monster?" "Overseer Varn," she spat, her hands clenching into fists. "He took my work, Ethereal Resonance, a way to send your spirit across the stars without risking your body. It was mine, my hope, and he's twisted it into something vile. Tomorrow, he'll claim it as his own, and I'll be nothing, just a ghost no one remembers." He studied her, the pain in her words echoing his own. Aria's face flashed in his mind, her grin, her trust in his designs, and he pushed it down. "Sounds like a bastard who needs a reckoning," he said, his voice hardening. "But jumping won't give it to him." Lirien's glow flared briefly, a spark of defiance. "What else can I do? It's gone, locked in his tower, guarded by machines and lies. I'm finished." Torin tilted his head, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. "Finished? Nah. You're still breathing, still pissed off. That's a start." He patted the stone beside him. "Sit closer. Tell me about this ethereal resonance. I'm a gearhead, used to build ships that danced with death. Maybe I can help." She stared at him, disbelief warring with exhaustion. The wind howled, urging her back to the edge, but his eyes, sharp, steady, human, held her there. Slowly, she shifted, settling a few feet away, her wings brushing the glowing stone. "Why would you care?" she asked, her voice softer now, fragile. Torin looked out at Aetherion, its lights flickering like a promise. "Because I've lost too much to let someone else fall," he said quietly. "And because bastards like Varn don't get to win, not if I can help it." The suns dipped lower, casting long shadows across the cliff. Lirien's glow steadied, faint but alive, and Torin knew he'd bought her a moment, a thread to pull her back from the void. The galaxy was a cruel place, but tonight, on this jagged edge, he'd found something worth fighting for. Chapter 2, Whispers from the Void. The wind of Klythera tore at Lirien's tattered wings as she knelt on the glowing cliff, her golden eyes locked on the human who dared to interrupt her fall. Torin Vex sat a few feet away, legs dangling over the abyss, his silver armor glinting like a beacon against the desert's gloom. The three red suns sank lower, their light pooling like blood across the horizon, painting Aetherion's floating towers in hues of fire and shadow. Lirien's voice had cracked when she spoke of Overseer Varn, of her stolen ethereal resonance, and now she trembled, caught between the edge she'd chosen and the stranger who refused to let her go. "You think you can fix this?" she snapped, her melodic tone sharp with bitterness. "A human, with your clumsy machines and your arrogance? You don't know what I've lost." Torin didn't flinch. He leaned back on his hands, the cliff's luminescence pulsing beneath his palms, and met her gaze with those piercing blue eyes, eyes that carried too many ghosts. "Maybe I don't," he said, his voice a low rumble over the wind. "But I've lost enough to recognize the look in your eyes. I've stood where you are, Lirien. Didn't jump. Figured I'd give you a reason not to, either." Her wings twitched, a faint shimmer rippling through their torn membranes. She wanted to lash out, to scream that he couldn't understand, Sylvaran's ashes, her people's cries, the weight of a dream snatched away, but his calm held her, an anchor in the storm of her grief. "What reason?" she whispered, barely audible, her glow dimming as despair tightened its grip. Torin shifted, turning to face her fully. The wind ruffled his gray-streaked hair, and for a moment, he looked older, worn, not just by time, but by something deeper. "Her name was Arya," he said, his tone softening, cracking at the edges. "My sister. 10 years ago, I built a ship, a beauty, fast as a comet, meant to outrun anything in the Fringe Wars. She was the pilot. Trusted me. But I missed a flaw in the core. It blew, right in the middle of a run. I heard her scream through the comms, heard the hull rip apart. Couldn't do a damn thing but listen." Lyrian's golden eyes widened, the fire in them flickering with something new, recognition, perhaps, or the faintest echo of his pain. She hugged herself tighter, wings folding against her back, and said nothing, letting him continue. "I stood on an airlock after that," Torin went on, staring past her into the void. "No suit, no tether, just me and the black. Wanted it to end. But I stepped back. Not because it got easier, it didn't, but because I wanted to spite the universe that took her. To prove I could still build something, fix something, even if it wasn't her." He paused, his jaw tightening. "So, yeah, I don't know your loss, Lirien. But I know the edge. And I'm asking you to step away from it. Tell me about this ethereal resonance, give me something to work with." The wind howled, a mournful wail that seemed to carry Sylvaran's ghosts. Lyrian's glow steadied, just a fraction, as she processed his words. He wasn't begging, wasn't preaching, just offering, raw and real. She shifted closer, not trusting yet, but drawn by the crack in his armor. "It's a bridge," she began, her voice halting. "A way to send your spirit, your essence, through space, to guide ships or machines without risking your body. It could have saved my people, kept them safe from the wars. I spent years on it, every circuit, every resonance pattern. It was perfect." Torin nodded, leaning in, his engineer's mind sparking behind those haunted eyes. "Sounds like a hell of a thing. How'd Varn get his hands on it?" Her fists clenched, nails digging into her jade skin. "He was my overseer, my guide. I trusted him. Showed him everything, prototypes, theories, even my failsafes. He smiled, praised me, then turned it all against me. Said I'd gone mad, that my work was a delusion. Locked it in his tower, up there," she pointed to Aetherion's highest spire, its peak glowing like a cruel star. "Tomorrow, he'll show it to the galaxy, claim it's his genius. And I'll be erased." Torin's gaze followed her finger, narrowing as he studied the tower. "Bastard's got a flair for theatrics," he muttered. "But erasing you? That's not done yet. You're still here, still fighting, whether you see it or not." Lyrian's laugh was bitter, brittle. "Fighting? I came here to die, human. What fight's left in me?" He smirked, a flicker of defiance breaking through his calm. "You're still talking, still pissed. That's fight enough for me." He patted the stone beside him again, closer this time. "Come on. Sit here. Tell me more, how's this resonance work? Circuits, energy flow, anything I can grab onto." She hesitated, the wind urging her back to the edge, its pull a cold comfort she'd nearly surrendered to. But Torin's voice, gruff, steady, human, cut through it, a lifeline she couldn't quite ignore. Slowly, she slid closer, settling beside him, her wings brushing the cliff's glow. "It's energy," she said, her tone softening as memory took over. "Your spirit's a frequency, unique, alive. The resonance tunes it, sends it through etheric coils to a receiver. I built safeguards, locks to keep it voluntary, to stop anyone from trapping a mind. Varn doesn't care about that. He wants control." Torin whistled low, impressed. "That's no small feat. You're a damn genius, Lirien. And he's a fool if he thinks he can wield that without you." Her glow flared, faint but real, at the praise. She glanced at him, searching his face, scarred, weathered, but open. "Why do you care?" she asked again, quieter now. "You don't know me. I'm nothing to you." He looked away, out at Aetherian's flickering lights, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. "Because I couldn't save Arya," he said finally, his voice rough with something raw. "Couldn't fix that mistake. But you? You're still here. Your work's still out there. And I'm not about to let some smug bastard bury it, or you, while I've got breath left to stop him." Lirien's breath caught, his words sinking deep. She'd come to end it, to let the void take her pain, but this human, this stranger, saw something she'd lost sight of, a spark, a fight, a chance. The suns dipped below the horizon, plunging Klythera into twilight, and the cliff's glow bathed them in a soft, pulsing light. She shifted closer still, their shoulders nearly touching, and felt the wind lose its grip, just a little. "What now?" she asked, her voice small but steady, a question for him, for herself. Torin turned to her, his smirk softening into something warmer. "Now we figure out how to hit Varn where it hurts. I'm good with machines, breaking them, building them. You're the brain behind the resonance. Together, we might just pull this off." The desert stretched endless around them, Aetherian's towers looming like a challenge. Lirien's glow steadied, brighter now, and Torin felt it, a thread of hope, fragile but real, tying them to this moment. The void whispered still, but his voice was louder, pulling her back, step by shaky step. Chapter 3, Schemes in the Shadows. Twilight draped Klythera in a violet shroud as Torin Vex and Lirien lingered on the glowing cliff, the wind softening to a mournful hum. Aetherian's towers shimmered above the desert, their lights pulsing like a heartbeat against the darkening sky. The three red suns had vanished, leaving only their afterglow to dance across the jagged stone beneath them. Lirien's jade skin glowed faintly, her golden eyes fixed on Torin, searching for something, truth, perhaps, or a crack in the calm he wore like armor. He'd pulled her back from the edge with words and scars of his own, and now she sat beside him, close enough that her tattered wings brushed his arm, a fragile bridge between their worlds. "You really think we can stop Varn?" she asked, her voice a mix of doubt and daring, the melodic lilt undercut by exhaustion. "He's untouchable, up there, in that tower, surrounded by his machines and his lies." Torin's smirk was a blade in the dim light, sharp and sure. "Untouchable's just a word, Lirien. I've cracked tougher nuts than him, ships, bunkers, egos. Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I'll move his whole damn world." He shifted, pulling a small multi-tool from his belt, its edges worn from years of use. "Besides, I've got an in. They hired me, some human grunt, to check Aetherian's energy grid. Means I've got access, codes, a reason to poke around. We can use that." Her wings twitched, a reflex of hope she didn't fully trust. "Use it how?" "My research, Ethereal Resonance, it's locked in his private lab. Guards, drones, etheric locks, I designed half of them myself. He's turned my own work against me." "That's our edge," Torin said, flipping the tool between his fingers. "You know the system, every wire, every failsafe. I'm good at breaking things that don't want to be broken. Together, we hit him where he's blind." He leaned closer, his blue eyes catching the cliff's glow. "But we need a plan, something fast, messy, human. Tomorrow's his big show, right? We crash it. Lyrien's glow flared, a brief pulse of life in her jade veins. Crash it? You mean, get inside? Steal it back. Her voice trembled, caught between disbelief and a flicker of fire she hadn't felt in months. Steal it, smash it, shove it in his face, whatever works, Torin replied, his tone hardening. Point is, he doesn't get to win. Not while you're still breathing. He paused, studying her, the way her wings hung limp, the shadows under her eyes. You're in, or you're not. But I'm not letting him bury you without a fight. She stared at him, the wind tugging at her black hair, and felt the weight of his words settle deep. Sylvara's ashes still burned in her memory, her family's songs silenced, her city's spires crumbled, but this human saw something else, a spark she thought extinguished. I'm in, she said, her voice steadying. But we'll need more than bravado. Varn's not careless. Torin nodded, standing and offering her a hand. Good. Then let's move. Sitting here won't get us anywhere. His grip was firm as he pulled her up, closer than before, and for a moment, their shadows merged on the glowing stone, a human's bulk against her slender frame. He didn't let go right away, and she didn't pull back, the contact stirring something in them both. They descended the cliff, the desert sands crunching underfoot as they headed for Aetherian's underbelly, a sprawling market carved into the dunes, where smugglers and outcasts thrived. Torin's mind churned, piecing together a plan: infiltrate Varn's tower during the city's anniversary gala, a night when Aetherian's elite would gather. He'd use his contractor status to slip in, plant devices to map the lab's defenses, and get Lirien close enough to reclaim her work. But he needed help, someone who knew the city's guts. His thoughts snagged on Arya, her laugh, her trust, and he clenched his jaw. He couldn't lose again. Not Lirien, not this fight. Where are we going? Lirien asked, her wings folding tight as they entered the market's chaos, stalls draped in glowing fabrics, aliens bartering tech and secrets, the air thick with spice and static. To find a friend, or at least someone who owes me, Torin said, weaving through the crowd. You can't pull this off with just us. We need eyes inside. They stopped at a shadowed stall, its counter littered with salvaged parts. A small Sylvaran emerged, Klythera, her skin a duller green than Lyrien's, her wings broken stubs, her eyes sharp with suspicion. Torin Vex, she rasped, her voice like sandpaper. What's a human want with me now? Last time, you nearly got me fried by a patrol. Got you out of it, too, Torin shot back, leaning on the counter. This is Lirien. We need your help, Varn's the target. Klythera's gaze flicked to Lirien, recognition dawning. You're the resonance girl. Thought you were dead, or mad. She snorted, crossing her arms. Varn's a viper. Why should I risk my neck for you? Because he's twisting her work into something ugly, Torin said, his voice low, fierce. And because I'll owe you, big. You know I pay my debts. Lirien stepped forward, her glow brightening. Klythera, you knew me on Sylvara. You saw what I built, what it could have done. Varn's not just stealing it, he's perverting it. Help us stop him. Klythera's eyes softened, a flicker of old loyalty breaking through her cynicism. Fine. But I want proof you're not just a human with a death wish. What's the play? Torin grinned, dangerous and sure. Tomorrow's gala, big party, lots of noise. I'm a contractor, got clearance to check the grid. We go in, plant scanners, map Varn's lab. Lirien gets us past her own locks. You get us a back door, some hole in Aetherian's undercity Varn's goons won't see. Klythera whistled, low and impressed. Bold. Stupid, but bold. I know a vent, old maintenance shaft, barely guarded. But if we're caught, it's over, for all of us. Then we don't get caught, Torin said, his smirk unwavering. He turned to Lirien. You good with this? Her wings lifted slightly, a shadow of their old grace. "Yes," she said, her voice firming. "I want him to pay." Torin's chest tightened, not just at her resolve, but at the fire rekindling in her eyes. He'd seen that spark in Arya, too, before the end. He shoved the memory down, focusing on the now. Then it settled. "Klyth, meet us at dawn, bring whatever you've got. We've got one shot." The market buzzed around them, a cacophony of life in the desert's heart. Torin led Lirien away, his hand brushing hers as they walked, a touch accidental but electric. She didn't pull back, and he didn't either, though his mind screamed warnings. He couldn't let her in, not like Arya, not when failure could take her, too. But her glow, her fight, tugged at him, a thread he couldn't cut. They found a quiet corner, the city's hum fading behind a dune. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice softer now, searching her face. "It's not too late to walk away." Lirien met his gaze, golden eyes fierce. "I was done walking away when you stopped me up there. This is my fight now, our fight." Torin nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "Ours, huh? Guess I'm stuck with you, then." Her lips curved, a ghost of a smile, and the night settled around them, heavy with promise and peril. Aetherion loomed above, Varn's tower a dark spike in the sky. Tomorrow would test them, break them, maybe, but for now, they had a plan, a spark, and each other. Chapter 4, Dance Among the Clouds. The gala lit Aetherian's sky like a supernova, its floating platforms aglow with crystalline chandeliers and streams of etheric light. Towers hovered above Klythera's desert, linked by shimmering bridges, their translucent walls pulsing with the city's heartbeat. Torin Vex stepped onto the central dais, his silver armor traded for a sleek, formal coat, black as the void, tailored to his broad frame, its edges glinting with subtle tech. Beside him, Lirien moved like a phantom, her jade skin glowing beneath a flowing cloak of star thread, its iridescent folds hiding her tattered wings. The fabric caught the light, turning her into a vision of alien grace, though her golden eyes flickered with unease. Tonight, they were a team, Torin the contractor, Lirien his aide, but beneath the masquerade, a storm brewed. The air thrummed with music, a Sylvaran melody woven with synthetic beats, as Aetherian's elite mingled, humans in sharp suits, Sylvarans with luminous skin, and other species draped in opulence. Torin scanned the crowd, his blue eyes sharp, picking out security drones drifting like silent sentinels among the guests. "Stay close," he murmured, his hand brushing Lirien's elbow, guiding her through the throng. "We're here to map Varn's defenses, cameras, guards, anything we can exploit. Act natural." Lirien nodded, her wings twitching beneath the cloak, a nervous tick she couldn't suppress. "Natural," she echoed, her voice a low hum. "As if I belong here, after he stripped me bare." Her glow dimmed, memories of Varn's betrayal clawing at her, Sylvara's fall, her research stolen, her name smeared. But Torin's touch steadied her, a quiet strength she clung to, even if she didn't fully understand why. They moved to a bar carved from glowing quartz, its surface swirling with patterns of light. Torin snagged 2 flutes of shimmering liquid, some alien brew that sparkled like stardust, and handed one to Lirien. "To surviving," he said, clinking her glass, his smirk a lifeline in the chaos. She sipped, the taste sharp and sweet, and felt a flicker of warmth, his confidence seeping into her, thawing the ice she'd carried since the cliff. "Dance with me," Torin said suddenly, setting his glass down. Before she could protest, he took her hand, pulling her onto the floor where couples swayed above the clouds. The platform vibrated beneath them, its edges open to the desert far below, a dizzying drop framed by the city's glow. "Cover," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "Let's us move," scope the place without looking suspicious. Lirien stiffened, her wings pressing against the cloak, but his grip was firm, guiding her into the rhythm. The music swelled, a slow, haunting tune, and Torin adapted, his steps sure despite their alien cadence. His hand settled on her waist, the other clasping hers, and she followed, her body aligning with his in a way that felt too natural, too right. "You're good at this," she said, her voice softening as they spun, her cloak flaring like a comet's tail. "Had to be," Torin replied, his eyes scanning the room even as he held her close. "Wars taught me to blend in, dance, fight, fix a ship with one hand tied. Keeps you alive." His gaze flicked to her, softening for a heartbeat. "You're not bad yourself. Let Varn see you, let him squirm." Her glow brightened, a defiant spark, and she tilted her head, catching sight of Overseer Varn across the dais. He stood near a railing, his tall frame draped in a robe of midnight blue, his black eyes glinting like polished obsidian. His presence was a blade in her chest, every smile he'd faked, every lie he'd spun, but Torin's arm tightened around her, grounding her. "He's watching," she murmured, her voice steadying. "He knows me." "Good," Torin said, spinning her so her cloak flared dramatically, a silent taunt. "Let him sweat. We're just a contractor and his aide, enjoying the night, nothing he can pin us on." His hand slid lower, resting just above her hip, and she felt a jolt, not fear, but something warmer, riskier. She leaned into it, her fingers tightening on his shoulder, and for a moment, the plan faded, leaving only the heat between them. The music shifted, faster now, and Torin guided her toward a security terminal near the platform's edge, a sleek pillar humming with energy. "Keep him distracted," he whispered, his lips brushing her ear as he palmed a tiny device from his sleeve, a scanner, small as a coin. "Talk to me, anything." Lirien's glow pulsed, her mind racing. "Ethereal Resonance," she said, loud enough for nearby ears, her voice carrying a scientist's edge. "It's a frequency dance, spirit to machine, seamless if you tune it right." Varn wouldn't understand that, would he? She shot a glance at the Overseer, whose eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on his glass. Torin chuckled, slipping the scanner under the terminal's base as they turned. "Sounds like poetry to me, and I'm no poet." "Bet it'd rattle him, hearing you talk like that." The device clicked into place, its signal burrowing into Aetherion's grid, mapping Varn's lab one pulse at a time. He pulled her closer, their steps masking the move, and whispered, "One down. 3 to go." They danced on, a fluid cover across the platform, planting scanners at each terminal, for in all, each a silent promise of Varn's undoing. Lirien's heart pounded, not just from the risk, but from Torin, his hands steady, his breath against her neck, the way he moved with her like they'd done this 1,000 times. She'd come to Klythera to die, but here, in his arms, she felt alive, dangerously so. The music slowed, and Varn approached, his shadow falling over them like a storm cloud. "Lirien," he said, his voice smooth as venom, his eyes flicking to Torin. "A surprise, seeing you here, recovered, it seems, from your troubles. And with a human, no less." Torin's arm tightened around her waist, protective, possessive. "Torin Vex," he said, his tone light but edged. "Contractor, checking the grid. Lirien's my aide. She's got a sharp mind, been telling me about this resonance thing. Fascinating stuff. Heard it's big news tomorrow." Varn's smile didn't reach his eyes, a crack showing in his mask. "Indeed. A marvel of my design. I'm curious how she knows of it, considering her state." His gaze bore into Lirien, a silent threat. She lifted her chin, her glow flaring defiantly. "A mind doesn't break so easily, Overseer. Nor does its work forget its maker." Her words were a blade, and Varn flinched, barely, but enough. Torin's grin was predatory. "Sounds like a hell of a story. Can't wait to hear the full version, properly credited, of course." He spun Lirien away, breaking Varn's line of sight, and whispered, "He's rattled." "Good." The dance ended, the crowd applauding as they slipped to the platform's edge, Varn's glare burning into their backs. Lirien's breath hitched, adrenaline and something deeper coursing through her. "That wasn't just cover," she said, her voice low, her hand lingering on his chest. You meant it. Torin met her gaze, his blue eyes intense, unguarded for a moment. Every word, he said, his voice rough. You're not a ghost, Lirien. Not to me. The night stretched on, Aetherions lights a constellation around them, but in that moment, it was just them, human and Sylvaran, bound by a dance, a plan, and a spark neither could deny. Tomorrow would bring the fight, but tonight, they'd claimed a victory of their own. Chapter 5, The Horrors Unveiled. The gala's glow faded as Torin Vex and Lirien slipped away from Aetherion's floating platforms, the city's lights receding into a constellation of false stars. They descended into the Undercity, a labyrinth of rusted conduits and shadowed alleys carved beneath the desert sands of Klythera. The air was thick with the tang of metal and dust, a stark contrast to the opulence above. Torin led the way, his black coat swaying with each step, the scanners they'd planted humming silently in his pocket, feeding data to a handheld slate. Lirien followed, her star-thread cloak pulled tight, her jade glow dimmed by exhaustion but flickering with a resolve she hadn't felt in months. The night was young, but the weight of their task pressed heavy. They had hours, not days, to unravel Varn's defenses. They found refuge in a derelict workshop, its walls lined with scavenged tech and flickering holoscreens. Klythera waited there, her small frame hunched over a workbench, her broken wings casting jagged shadows. "Took you long enough," she rasped, her dull green eyes narrowing as she tossed Torin a cracked data chip. "Vents ready, old shaft, half forgotten, lead straight to Varn's tower. You owe me a ship's worth of credits for this." Torin caught the chip, his smirk faint but sharp. "You'll get it, assuming we don't die tomorrow." He plugged the chip into the slate, its screen flaring to life with streams of code, security grids, drone patterns, etheric lock signatures, all pulled from the scanners they'd planted. He handed it to Lirien, his fingers brushing hers, a touch that lingered a heartbeat too long. "Your baby, tell me what we've got." Lyrian's golden eyes scanned the data, her glow pulsing as she traced the lines of her own creation. "It's all here," she said, her voice tight with a mix of awe and dread. "The lab's layout, my resonance coils, the control hub. He's kept everything intact, even my failsafes." She paused, her wings twitching, a shadow crossing her face. "But, this isn't right." Torin leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers, his blue eyes narrowing. "What's off?" She tapped the screen, pulling up a series of encrypted logs. Her fingers flew, cracking the code with a scientist's precision, and the truth spilled out, a roster of names, schedules, neural interface specs far beyond her original design. "He's not just showing it off," she whispered, her glow dimming to a flicker. "He's planning a mass transfer, hundreds of minds, maybe thousands. These are citizens, workers, drifters, people from the Undercity. He's going to trap them in the resonance network, turn them into puppets." Torin's jaw clenched, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "Control," he growled. "Not exploration, slavery. That's what he's twisted it into." He slammed a fist on the workbench, the sound echoing in the cramped space. "Bastard's not just a thief, he's a tyrant." Lyrian's hands trembled, the slate slipping slightly as memories of Sylvaran flooded back, her city's spires burning, her people's screams swallowed by the void. "This is what I wanted to stop," she said, her voice breaking. "My work was for freedom, for safety. He's made it a cage." Her wings folded tight, her glow nearly gone, and she sank onto a stool, the weight of it crushing her anew. Torin knelt before her, his hands on her knees, steady and warm. "Hey," he said, his voice low, urgent. "This isn't on you. He did this, not you. And we're gonna tear it down, every coil, every lie." His blue eyes locked with hers, fierce but soft, pulling her back from the abyss she'd nearly leapt into once before. She met his gaze, her golden eyes glistening, and felt his strength seep into her, a lifeline she didn't expect. "How?" she asked, her voice small but steadying. "It's not just about my research anymore. It's bigger, darker. Klyth, Torin called, not breaking eye contact with Lirien. That vent, can it get us to the main hub? Not just the lab, the core systems. The Sylvaran nodded, her sharp eyes glinting. Yeah, tight squeeze, but it's a straight shot. Why? Because we're not just stealing it back, Torin said, standing and pulling Lirien up with him. We're crashing the whole damn show, live, for everyone to see. Varn wants a spectacle. We'll give him one he can't control. He turned to Lirien, his hand lingering on her arm. You built failsafes, right? Can we use turn his demo into a trap? Her glow flared, a spark reigniting. Yes, she said, her mind racing. The resonance locks, it rejects forced transfers. If we overload it during his show, it'll shut down, expose him. But we'd need someone inside the system to trigger it. Torin's smirk returned, dangerous and sure. Guess who's volunteering? He tapped his chest, the gesture brash but weighted with something deeper, trust, sacrifice, a shadow of areas lost driving him forward. Lirien's wings lifted, a faint shimmer of defiance. No, she said, stepping closer, her hand on his chest. Not alone. I know the resonance, I'll guide you. We do this together. Before he could argue, a drone's hum cut through the silence, low, menacing, approaching fast. Patrol, Klyth hissed, dousing the lights. Torin pulled Lirien into a shadowed corner, his body shielding hers as the drone's beam swept the alley outside. The space was tight, their breaths mingling, her jade skin pressed against his coat. His hand found her waist, steadying her, and she felt his heartbeat, fast, human, alive. Play along, he whispered, his lips brushing her ear, and tilted her chin up, mimicking a lover's embrace. The drone paused, its lens whirring, then moved on, dismissing them as a fleeting tryst. But the moment lingered, Lirien's hands on his shoulders, her glow flaring against his warmth, and without thinking, she rose on her toes, her lips meeting his in a kiss that wasn't part of the act. It was brief, desperate, a collision of need and fear. Torin froze, then responded, his hand tightening on her waist, his kiss rough but tender, a spark igniting in the dark. When they parted, breathless, his blue eyes searched hers, a storm of want and restraint. That wasn't planned, he rasped, his voice thick. No, Lirien said, her glow pulsing wildly, her fingers lingering on his chest. But I'm not sorry. Sylvara's ashes faded for a moment, replaced by him, his strength, his fire, pulling her from the void she'd nearly surrendered to. Klytha's cough broke the spell, her voice dry. If you're done, we've got work. Vents ready, dawn's our window. Torin stepped back, his hand brushing Lirien's one last time, a silent promise. Right, he said, his smirk returning, though his eyes stayed on her. Klyth, you're with us, eyes on the ground. Lirien, you're the brain. I'm the muscle, and the bait. Her wings lifted higher, a shadow of their old grace. Together, she said, her voice firm, echoing his earlier words. We end this together. The workshop hummed with purpose as they finalized the plan, Klyth mapping the vent, Lirien tweaking the slate, Torin checking his gear. The truth of Varn's scheme loomed like a specter, a horror beyond theft, but it fueled them now. Torin's mind snagged on Arya, her scream, his failure, but Lirien's kiss burned brighter, a tether to the present. He wouldn't lose her, not to Varn, not to the void. Aetherion slept above, its towers gleaming in the night, unaware of the storm brewing below. Tomorrow, they'd strike, expose Varn, reclaim Lirien's soul, and maybe, just maybe, find something worth keeping in the wreckage. Chapter 6, Dawn of Love and Justice. The dawn broke over Klythera's desert in a blaze of crimson, the three red suns clawing their way above the horizon, casting long shadows across Aetherion's floating spires. Torin Vex, Lirien, and Klyth crouched in the Undercity's maintenance vent, a narrow, rusted tunnel snaking toward Varn's tower. The air was stale, heavy with the hum of machinery, but Torin's blue eyes burned with focus, his silver coat swapped for a combat rig patched with years of wear. Lyrien's jade glow pulsed beside him, her star-thread cloak discarded, her tattered wings trembling with anticipation. Klythera led the way, her small frame darting ahead, her broken stubs of wings brushing the walls as she whispered directions. Today, they'd ended Varn's tyranny, his theft, the nightmare he'd spun from Lyrien's dream. The vent spat them into the tower's core, a vast chamber of gleaming coils and pulsing etheric conduits, the heart of Ethereal Resonance. Varn stood at a central console, his midnight robe stark against the machinery, his black eyes glinting as he addressed a hovering array of holoscreens. A crowd of Aetherions elite watched from the gala platform above, their faces projected in real time, unaware of the horror he'd planned. "Witness the future," he declared, his voice smooth and cold. "A network of minds, unified under my command." Torin signaled Klythera, who slipped into the shadows, planting disruptors along the walls, small charges to cripple the system if needed. Lirien moved to a secondary console, her fingers flying over the controls, hacking into her own creation. "He's starting," she hissed, her glow flaring. "He's linked the citizens, hundreds of them, through neural bands downstairs." Torin's jaw tightened, Aria's scream echoing in his mind, a failure he wouldn't repeat. "Then we stop him, now." He stepped into the open, drawing Varn's gaze, his voice booming. "Nice show, Overseer. Shame it's built on lies, and about to crash." Varn spun, his calm fracturing into a sneer. "Vex," he spat. "And Lirien, still clinging to delusions, I see." Drones whirred to life, their lenses glowing red, but Torin was faster, hurling a pulse grenade that fried two in a burst of sparks. "Secure them." Varn barked, and guards surged forward, armored Sylvarans with shock batons crackling. Lyrien's voice cut through the chaos. "You stole my work, Varn, but you never understood it." She slammed a command into the console, her fail-safes kicking in, a ripple of energy that locked the resonance coils, halting the transfer midstream. "It won't obey you, not without consent." Varn's eyes widened, fury twisting his face. "You think you can stop progress?" He lunged for the main controls, overriding her block, and the coils flared back to life, their hum rising to a scream. "I'll bury you both in the network, starting with him." He pointed at Torin, and a neural band snapped onto his wrist from a drone's claw, its tendrils burrowing into his skin. Torin grunted, pain searing up his arm, but his smirk held. "Bad move." He nodded to Lirien, who triggered the overload, her fail-safes amplifying the signal, turning it against itself. The holoscreens flickered, broadcasting the chaos live, Varn's guards faltering, the coils sparking, the citizens' neural links shutting down. Torin ripped the band off, diving at a guard and slamming him into the floor, his combat training a blur of human ferocity. Klythera's charges detonated, small, precise blasts that shattered secondary systems, smoke billowing as drones crashed. Lirien darted to Torin's side, her glow blazing, and together they fought, her grace weaving through his strength, a dance born of trust. Varn roared, slamming the console, but the resonance buckled, its energy surging back in a wave that knocked him to his knees. The chamber doors burst open, and Ilara Voss, a towering Sylvaran in council robes, strode in, flanked by peacekeepers. Her voice was steel. "Overseer Varn, you're detained, ethical violations, forced manipulation. The galaxy sees your shame." The holoscreens blared the truth, Varn's downfall witnessed by all. He lunged one last time, a blade flashing from his sleeve, but Torin intercepted, his fist crashing into Varn's jaw with a crack that echoed. "That's for her," he growled, standing over the crumpled overseer as peacekeepers dragged him away. Justice was served, Lyrien's work reclaimed, her name cleared. Hours later, the cliff glowed under Klythera's suns, its light softer now, a sanctuary reborn. Torin and Lirien stood at its edge, the desert sprawling below, Aetherion's towers gleaming in the distance. She wore a simple tunic, her wings free, catching the breeze. He'd shed his rig, his shirt loose, scars bared to the dawn. "It's over," she said, her golden eyes on him, her glow steady, alive. "Not quite," Torin replied, stepping closer, his hand brushing her cheek. "You're still here. That's what matters." His voice softened, rough with something raw. "I couldn't save Arya, but you, Lirien, you're my second chance." Her wings lifted, shimmering, and she pressed against him, her lips finding his in a kiss that burned away the past. It was fierce, urgent, jade against tan, alien against human, a collision of need and triumph. He lifted her, her legs wrapping around him, and they sank to the stone, the cliff's glow cradling them as clothes fell away. Her fingers traced his scars, his hands mapped her curves, their union a defiance of the void that had nearly claimed them both. The suns climbed higher, their light bathing them in fire, and every touch, every sigh, was a vow, to live, to fight, to love. Later, tangled in each other's arms, Lirien traced his chest, her voice a hum. "The council wants me to lead the Resonance project, properly this time. With safeguards. Will you stay?" Torin grinned, pulling her closer, his blue eyes alight. "Try getting rid of me, genius. I'm your test subject, mind, body, whatever you need." He kissed her temple, softer now. "We'll build something new, together." She smiled, her glow merging with the dawn, and the cliff stood witness, not to despair, but to a beginning. Aetherion hummed below, its future uncertain but bright, and they faced it as one, human and Sylvaran, bound by a love forged in the dark, shining now in the light. And so, we've journeyed across Klythera's glowing cliffs, from Torin Vex's desperate call that pulled Lirien from despair, through shadowed schemes and a gala's deceptive dance, to a heart-stopping clash with Overseer Varn's twisted empire, ending in a dawn of love and justice where their bond rebuilt a world from ashes. If this saga stirred your soul and set your heart racing, keep the flame alive, leave a like and subscribe to fuel Sci-Fi Nebula's climb to 1,000 subs. Your passion is the spark that drives our tales, and we're grateful to share this starry path with you. Until the next adventure, keep listening for the whispers that change everything.